optimism and hope for the common denominator of over 80 ethnicity, a country with 3,000 years of glorious history and culture, mother of freedom. Ethiopia.
Welcome to Ethiopia Today. Our today's presentation covers the following topics. Ethiopia to produce COVID-19 vaccine locally. Libyan government to remain in office until elections. U.S. House passes short-term bill to avoid government shutdown. Terrorist TPLF recruits child soldiers and mothers to ongoing conflict. Asuu says hold Buhari responsible if we embark on another strike. The European Green Deal can strengthen Africa's and Europe's economies. Details are presented as follows.
Ethiopia to produce COVID-19 vaccine locally. Preparations are underway to produce the COVID-19 vaccine in Ethiopia, Ministry of Health disclosed. Health Minister Dr. Leah Tadesse told the Ethiopian Herald that the outbreak of COVID-19 has had a negative effect on the health sector of the nation as well as further social and economic damage to the country, the continent and the world at large. Ethiopia, since the outbreak, has been implementing and enforcing various prevention and control methods to minimize the negative effects of the cholera virus. The country has been also receiving different types of vaccines from donor countries. Apart from getting vaccines, currently the government of Ethiopia is working with international organizations and the African Union to increase funding for the COVID-19 vaccine, she explained. According to Leah, there has been a lot of pressure on the health sector since the outbreak of the pandemic. Nevertheless, much has been done to improve the country's health system while reducing the negative impact of the pandemic on health sector. Hence, efforts have been made to reorganize the health facilities, mobilize and increase resources, increase budgets, improve health systems, strengthen laboratory capacity, advance patient care and increase oxygen production capacity of the country, she added. Furthermore, the necessary steps are met to produce pharmaceutical equipment, especially sanitizer, masks, gloves, protective equipment, and so on, which are important to pave the way to producing vaccines in Ethiopia. Along with efforts to prevent the epidemic, the Ethiopian Ministry of Health, in collaboration with the African Union Centers for Disease Control and partners, has started preparation to produce the vaccine. The all member states are working together as a continent instead of producing the vaccine individually, adding that Ethiopia is actively participating in the initiative, recognizing the importance of this initiative as a country and a continent, she noted. At the same time, a lot of work is being done to make the vaccine available locally because Ethiopia is a big and strategic country to Africa. Therefore, market visibility studies are underway, discussions and experiences sharing with partner countries and organizations have been held, and detailed identification of activities are carried out to launch the production. Upon completion of this detailed study, she indicated that the country would begin production of the vaccine. Libyan government to remain in office until elections. Libyan Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dbeibah on Tuesday said his government will remain in office until elections and will only hand over to an elected government, according to the report by independent Uganda. We will not allow new transitional phases and will not abandon our role in the government until the elections held. The government of national unity will continue working until handing over office to an elected government, Dbeibah said on his televised speech. Dbeibah accused a political class of dominating the country over the past years by issuing decisions in the Libyan House of Representatives and continuing to falsify decisions without oversight and accountability, and of attempting to create political division and chaos in the country. The Prime Minister also accused the political class of failing the elections without even clarifying the reasons for not holding the elections. Dbeibah made the remarks 2 days ahead of a vote in the House of Representatives for a new Prime Minister. House of Representatives Speaker Aguila Sale has said Dbeibah's government expired and called for appointing a new one. The House of Representatives withdrew confidence from the government in September last year and kept it as a caretaker government. Dbeibah was appointed as the Prime Minister of the Government of National Unity in February by the unsponsored Libyan Political Dialogue Forum to end years of political division in the country. Libya had been expected to hold general elections on December 24 last year, but the elections were postponed indefinitely due to technical and legal issues, according to the country's High National Elections Commission. U.S. House passes short-term bill to avoid government shutdown. The U.S. House of Representatives on Tuesday passed a short-term bill to extend federal government funding until March 11 to avoid a government shutdown. The House voted 272 by 162 to pass the bill known as the Continuing Resolution CR to give lawmakers more time to strike a deal to fund the government for the rest of the fiscal year 2022. The continuing resolution passed by the House reflects our majority's determination to ensure that the work of government is not disrupted by a shutdown, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said in a statement after the vote. This resolution is premised on an understanding that the House and Senate Appropriations Committees are close to an agreement on the parameters for an omnibus funding package that will be ready for the House floor no later than March 8. It can be signed by President Joe Biden before this new March 11th deadline, Hoyer said. Now the CR heads to the Senate, where Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the chamber will take it up quickly and in time before the current government funding measure runs out on February 18. This CR provides a little more time to reach a deal for a spending package. It is the responsible and prudent path forward that eliminates the risk of a shutdown, Schumer said Tuesday on the Senate floor. This is the third time Congress has passed a short-term bill to keep the federal government running since the fiscal year 2022 began on October 1 last year. Maya McGuinness, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, said that the U.S. budget process is clearly broken and lawmakers are still operating the government on stopgap measures. There shouldn't need to be a third CR or a second or a first. The basic task of governing is budgeting, and yet again lawmakers have found themselves unable to get the job done, McGuinness said Tuesday in a statement. Noting that the national debt heads towards a new record high as a share of the economy in the next decade, McGuinness said it's time to target and prioritize spending rather than enacting blanket increases. Lawmakers should come together to put our country on more sound fiscal footing. That starts by restoring discretionary spending caps at reasonable and responsible levels, which will both improve fiscal discipline and support a smoother and faster appropriations process, she said. The U.S. total public debt outstanding exceeded $30 trillion earlier this year, which included $23.5 trillion in debt held by the public and $6.5 trillion in intergovernmental holding, according to the Treasury Department. Terrorist TPLF recruits child soldiers and mothers to ongoing conflict. Child soldiers and mothers with young ones strapped to their backs sent into battle with little chance of return, all because of a lust for power, said Valerie Browning, Ethiopia-based Australian nurse. Recently, Browning visited the front line herself, according to the Ethiopian Herald. What she witnessed was a thing of nightmares. Bloodied young soldiers with babies strapped to their backs and desperately seeking medical treatment is an all-too-familiar image for Valerie. Staying with the Canberra Times, she said, she has heard the stories of soldiers as young as 14 being drugged with marijuana and pushed out stoned to fight other young fit men from government forces. It is heart-wrenching to see. These boys who should be at school instead are being killed or captured, and their dead bodies have hashish on them, sometimes tied to their neck and spare supplies around a leg. Browning runs the Afar Pastoral Development Association of DA, which works to improve literacy, promote maternal and child health, eradicate harmful traditional practices such as female genital mutilation, and tackle the spread of HIV and AIDS. The conflict in Afar and Amhara has isolated people from food, knocked out water reserves, and destroyed medical clinics. We have a massive full-scale war in northern Afar affecting 5 districts and close to 500,000 people, she noted. There are at least 300,000 displaced people walking for days to find food, water, or medical attention. There are 2.5 million people in Afar put on the planet for the same reasons as you or I, and apparently it's okay to obliterate them for the sake of power, Browning stated. For now, all she and her team can do is focusing their attention on those who are suffering, injured, or in grave danger. She spoke by phone with Australian Associated Press while loading a truck headed to the front line with supplies. As an organization, Afar Development Pastoral Association, we are buying up food that we can, like dates and ground barley, and sending trucks with water containers to other areas in need, she said. Asuu says hold Buhari responsible if we embark on another strike. Asuu said Nigerians should hold the government responsible if another industrial action hits the universities in no distant time, reported on Premium Times. The Academic Staff Union of Universities Asuu Lagos Zone has called on Nigerians to engage the Nigerian government on issues it said are currently threatening the industrial peace in public university. Asuu said the union dreads embarking on strike and that deploys it as a last resort only when all other means must have failed. Recall that the National Executive Council (NEC) of the union had directed its various chapters to set aside a day to sensitize and mobilize Nigerians for its fight of saving the university system from collapsing. Asuu said the Nigerian government has refused to implement the Memorandum of Action (MOA) that led to the suspension of its 9-month prolonged strike in 2020. In his speech during a press conference at the University of Lagos Akoka on Tuesday, the coordinator of Lagos Zone of Asuu, Dr. Adelaja Ojekoya, coordinator, said the government's refusal to listen to the union and address issues it had agreed to address in the 2020 Memorandum of Action is drawing the line of strike. He said the government should be held responsible should Asuu decide to embark on another round of strikes, which he noted could happen in no distant time. Dr. Ojokoya's statement reads in part, "It becomes very important and germane to address this press conference to sensitize the public and express the concerns of our union about the refusal of the federal government to sign and implement the renegotiated 2009 agreement between FGN and Asuu adoption of the University Transparency and Accountability Solution UDA's funding of state universities non-payment of withheld salaries, check-off dues and promotion arrears. Some of the lingering issues between the government and the academic staff union as listed by Dr. Ojokoya is the renegotiation of the 2009 Asuu-FGN agreement, which he noted ought to have been reviewed every 3 years. However, 9 months after the renegotiation concluded in May 2021, Asuu said the government has refused to sign and implement the renegotiated agreement. Dr. Ojokoya said the more renegotiation was allegedly deliberately frustrated and delayed by the leadership of the erstwhile leadership of the renegotiated committee. However, with the removal of Dr. Wael Babalak and his replacement with Professor Manzali Jubril, the renegotiation was concluded in May 2021. The union is, however, taken aback that since the conclusion of the renegotiation 9 months ago, the federal government has yet to sign and implement the renegotiated agreement, Dr. Ojokoya said. The Minister of Labor and Employment, Chris Njige, had in December said the National Information Technology Development Agency (NITDA) gave positive feedback on the University Transparency and Accountability Solution UDAs, but that with little things to be addressed. 2 months after the submission, the union decried that the government is yet to approve the use of UDAs for universities, saying it is still trying to force the Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System (IPPS) down its throat. Asuu also alleges that the IPPS is found to be marred with irregularities. He said it is against this backdrop that our union calls on the federal government to immediately approve the deployment of UDAs as a payment platform in our universities if we expect improvement in the operation and conditions of our ivory towers. The deliberate refusal of the government to adopt UDAs as a payment platform in the university system further exposed the lip service that our government pays to the war against corruption. Government should therefore embrace Asuu's innovation and deployment of a more robust system of human resource management and compensation which has been designed to address the peculiarities of our university system and end inappropriate recruitments in the system. Asuu also demands the regulation of the proliferation of state-owned universities by governors who it alleges owe staff salaries and payment of university subventions, leaving the universities with failing infrastructures. He said this proliferation has led to the decayed infrastructural facilities, withholding of salaries of academic staff, no research grants, etc. The common practice of state governments withholding the salary of our members for a period ranging from 3 to 8 months is condemnable. In most cases, net salaries are paid and sometimes not paid at all. The continued denial and non-release of subventions to cater for the needs of these universities by reason of exigencies is unacceptable. Our union wants to call on the government to without delay review the laws of the National Universities Commission (NUC) and make it more stringent for the establishment of universities in the country. How the European Green Deal can strengthen Africa's and Europe's economies. Economic and commercial relationships with Africa are set to play an ever greater role in determining countries' and blocs' place in the global economic order. By 2025, Africa will have over 100 cities with more than 1 million inhabitants, more than 3 times the number in the European Union. By 2030, 42% of the world's young people will live in Africa, making the continent home to the largest supply of affordable labor on the planet in the coming decades. And with an extremely extensive supply of inexpensive and available land, Africa is already attracting international businesses looking for affordable manufacturing sites. Moreover, Africa is the fastest growing end market for a widening range of products. This means it is increasingly not just a place that makes things to export, but is also home to important consumer markets that are underserved and set to rapidly expand. This trend will accelerate with the full implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which launched in January 2021. Much of this growth is being powered by the green energy innovation ecosystems that are emerging in sub-Saharan Africa. They are already defining the future trajectory of economic growth on the continent. These innovation ecosystems thrive by combining cutting-edge digital technologies and telecommunications with renewable energy technologies. They respond to Africa's unique market needs, which include significant consumer demand for better digital connectivity, and they make use of the considerable green energy potential of the continent. These ecosystems are by definition a cross-industry phenomenon in which growth in one sector supports growth in another. Solar energy, electric vehicles, and telecommunications and information and communications technology (ICT) are all intimately interconnected. They synergize with one another to create a virtuous cycle of market expansion for each sector. Africa has seen growth in these sectors thanks to their interconnectedness. For example, the expansion of digital financing platforms operating over mobile networks has enabled consumers to purchase off-grid solar power systems. The components needed for these systems are supplied by local solar panel manufacturing sectors. Access to affordable power has enabled the development of new commercial markets for other goods and services. However, it is far from assured that Europe will play a primary role in the new commercial architecture emerging in Africa. Indeed, Europe's global economic competitiveness is at risk. Now and in the coming years, international actors will be racing to establish new manufacturing value chains, a process that is shaping Africa's economy and boosting those actors' positions in the global economic order. Indeed, in the last decade, China overtook the EU to become Africa's top trading partner, and India became the continent's second largest such partner. Turkey's rate of growth in African trade surpassed the EU's by a factor of 5, while the Gulf Arab states similarly expanded their trade and investment relationships with Africa. Even prior to the outbreak of COVID-19, European, Gulf Arab and Asian states showed a growing interest in nearshoring, shortening supply chains to bring them closer to intended end markets. This interest has only increased in the time since. European companies in Africa are forced to compete with Chinese counterparts that have the advantage of formidable state backing. But when it comes to successful investment partnerships in Africa, bigger does not always mean better. Chinese investments across the continent have not brought about a China-style economic boom in any African country. Europe could fill this gap by investing in the creation of large-scale value-added production in sub-Saharan Africa. To do so, Europe needs to deploy its resources in a coordinated and strategic manner. The EU urgently needs to combine the foreign policy aspect of its European Green Deal with its nascent Global Gateway program, which is its answer to China's Belt and Road Initiative BRI. Form should follow function, and the function needed is a unity of action among Europeans. Though this is a perennial challenge, European policymakers should acknowledge that a Europe that fails to be a whole greater than the sum of its parts will inevitably be eclipsed by China and other competitors. Sub-Saharan Africa's economy is changing rapidly. Europeans have an opportunity to be part of this and to help promote economic growth while strengthening geopolitical ties with governments and businesses across the continent. But to achieve this, they will need to provide investment and other support that makes a real difference to Africa's growth trajectory. New and enhanced global economic engagement with Africa in the last decade led to unprecedentedly high growth rates in several sub-Saharan African countries. Dubbed Africa's lion economies, these nations consistently experienced economic growth rates of more than 6%. But while Europe has hesitated, other powers have stepped in to assume technological and commercial leadership roles and have strengthened their political ties with African countries in the process. For example, almost half of the Chinese companies operating in Africa during the past decade have introduced a new product or service to the local market, while more than one-third have introduced a new technology. Such expansion has been to Europe's detriment. Far from being the more the merrier, the value-added production created in Africa by such powers has displaced Europe from various markets, reduced European revenues, and made it more likely that Europe will fall further behind. So far, the EU and its member states have failed to address this challenge, resulting in a decline in Europe's political influence on the continent. This has coincided with growing interest across the world in how to shorten key supply chains. In the years immediately before the pandemic, global supply chains were already becoming shorter as companies and countries placed greater emphasis on resilience over immediate cost efficiency. For both European and non-European companies, this profound structural transformation meant bringing sourcing and manufacturing closer to European end markets. The commercial imperative to maintain a low-cost base while nearshoring has led to the establishment of new production facilities in Africa. Since the onset of the pandemic, this trend has accelerated as part of the competition among international actors. Undeterred by the severe economic impact of COVID-19, countries such as China, Japan, South Korea, Turkey, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates have expanded their economic involvement in sub-Saharan Africa faster than Europe has. In line with this, each of these countries has improved its position in Africa's expanding end markets, according to the report on European Council on Foreign Relations site. This brings the end of our presentation.
Thanks for staying with us. If you enjoyed our presentation, give us a like and share to your social contacts. And also don't forget to subscribe and tap on the notification bell if this is your first time. Please also check on our collection of favorites on the description section below. See you on our next video. Many thanks. May God bless Ethiopia and its people.
Optimism and hope for the common denominator of over 80 ethnicity, a country with 3,000 years of glorious history and culture, mother of freedom. Ethiopia.